Is the Myrtle Beach housing market finally becoming a buyer's market? Are home prices actually dropping? And with mortgage rates in the 6% range, does it make sense now to buy, sell, or just simply stand on the sidelines and wait? We are officially more than halfway through 2026. Today, I'm going to break down the statistics actually happening right here in the Myrtle Beach housing market and use current local statistics, not national headlines, not predictions designed to scare you. We're going to look at the inventory, the home prices, the days on market, the closed and pending sales, as well as price reductions, interest rate, and the major differences between single family homes and condos right here in the Grand Strand. I'm also going to explain what these numbers mean for you if you're considering to relocate to the Myrtle Beach area, buy a second home, or even sell a property here along the Grand Strand. I'm Phil T with Coastal Living with Phil T, and I'm here to help buyers and sellers throughout the Myrtle Beach area and along the Carolina coast. Let's get into it. The best way to describe the Myrtle Beach market halfway through 2026 is this: it's not one market. We really have several different markets operating at the same time. Single family homes are behaving differently than condos. New construction, well, they're behaving differently than resale properties. And a home in Carolina Forest or even Conway may experience a completely different level of demand than an oceanfront condo in Myrtle Beach, North Myrtle, or even in Garden City. That's why a broad statement like Myrtle Beach is a buyer's market or prices are crashing can be extremely misleading. Depending on your location and property type, both buyers and sellers can have leverage. The latest completed local data shows approximately about 5 months of inventory right now for resale single-family homes. That is fairly close to a balanced market, but still slightly favors sellers, especially when the home is in good condition, in a desirable location, and priced correctly. The condo market has approximately 8 months of inventory, which gives buyers considerably more selection and negotiation power. So, right away, we have a tale of two different markets. Well, let's start out with talking about inventory, because supply affects almost everything else. In the single-family resale market, we are currently sitting at about 5 months of supply. A completely balanced market is generally considered to be around 6 months of inventory. Below that, sellers usually retain some advantage. Above that level, buyers generally begin to gain more leverage. 5 months does not mean that every seller can name their price. Buyers are far more selective today than they were in 2021 or even in 2022. But it does mean that we don't have a massive oversupply of single-family homes across the Grand Strand. The condo and townhome market, though, is different. With approximately 8 months of supply, condo buyers have more listings to compare, more time to make decisions, and more opportunities to negotiate. That is especially true when similar units are available in the same building or community. Let's take, for example, if you have 3 two-bedroom oceanfront condos listed in the same building, buyers will compare the price and condition. In fact, they're also going to probably compare the view. The HOA fees are going to be the same, the insurance exposure, but the big differences might be the rental history and the different options that condo provides. In this environment, a seller who is overpriced doesn't just sit a little longer. That listing is almost totally, completely ignored. Now let's talk about pricing, because this is where the headlines can become quite confusing. For resale single-family homes, the latest local data placed the average sale at approximately $490,000 in the Grand Strand, while the median sale price was about $387,500. The average price was down roughly about 3% compared to the same period last year. However, that does not automatically mean every home along the Grand Strand lost 3% of its value. Average prices can change dramatically depending on the mix of properties that sold during that particular month. If fewer luxury homes closed 1 month and the average then fell, even though the value of a typical neighborhood home has barely moved. That is why I normally look at the median price. Comparable sales, inventory, and of course the current pending activity together rather than just relying on one number. The condo market's average sales price was approximately $268,000 with a median of $223,500. Condo prices have experienced even more pressure, with the latest figures showing both the average and median price below last year's level. Again, this does not mean that every condo is dropping equally. In fact, a newer oceanfront unit with strong rental income, reasonable HOA fees, good reserves, and no major assessment concerns may hold its value extremely well. An older building with higher HOA fees, insurance issues, limited financing options, or upcoming repairs, though, may face much greater pricing pressure. The building itself matters almost as much as the individual condo. Closed sales tell us exactly what's happening several weeks or even a few months ago. Pending sales tell us what buyers are doing right now. Both numbers, though, are very important, but pending sales are generally the better leading indicator. Single-family closed sales inventory increased strongly during the spring and early summer of 2026. Approximately 600 resale homes closed during the reported months, representing an increase actually from previous years. Condos closed sales also rose substantially, with about 460 units closing. Even more importantly, pending sales increased by roughly 25% year over year in both the single family and condo segments during the spring reporting period. That tells us that buyers have not disappeared along the Grand Strand. They're still moving to this area. They are still purchasing secondary homes, and they're still retiring here. And we can see why. Investors are also still looking for opportunity. But today, buyers are more patient and more payment conscientious than ever. They are not necessarily rushing to purchase their first available property. They are comparing homes, analyzing monthly expenses, and negotiating when they believe the seller's price might be a little bit too aggressive. So demand is still present, but it is a disciplined demand. An important factor when looking at what the market is doing is days on market. Homes are taking a little bit longer to sell than they did during the pandemic market, but the pandemic was a weird time. There never was a market quite like it. So it really depends, though, on which measurement you're using, right? In resale single-family homes that closed recently, they averaged about 106 days on market, while the median time to contract was actually closer to 78 days. Condos averaged approximately about 121 days to sell, with the median closer to 85. That difference between the average and median is important. Some well-priced properties are still selling quite quickly. Other properties begin too high, they sit on the market, go through one or more price reductions, and eventually sell a few months later. Those overpriced listings pull the average day on market higher. For sellers, the first 2 or 3 weeks remain incredibly important. That is when the new listing receives the most amount of attention. If buyers look at photos, they compare the price with nearby properties and determine it's overpriced, they may not come back, even after the price is reduced later. A price reduction can create new interest, but it cannot completely recreate the momentum of a properly priced new listing. Speaking of price reductions are becoming more and more common because some sellers are still pricing based on the market from several years ago. Today, buyers have more information and more options. They can see how long the home has been listed. They can see previous price changes. They can compare competing listings almost instantaneously. And because mortgage payments are higher, buyers are less willing to overlook an aggressive asking price at this point. Nationally, approximately 20% of active listings had a price reduction in July, with the South showing one of the highest regional shares of reduced listing. Locally, the percentages can vary significantly, of course, between neighborhoods and property type, but the basic lesson applies still. Pricing high and planning to negotiate later is risky. The longer the property sits, the more the buyer begins to wonder what is wrong with it. For sellers, your goal should not necessarily be the most expensive or even least expensive in the neighborhood. The goal is to become the most compelling option at your price point. Of course, one of the biggest forces affecting the market today is mortgage rates. At the end of July 2026, the average 30-year fixed mortgage rate was approximately 6.66%. Earlier in the year, rates briefly moved closer to the 6th percentile, which helped bring a lot more buyers back into the market. But as rates climb again, affordability becomes more difficult. Half a percentage point may not sound dramatic, but it makes a huge noticeable difference to someone's monthly payment. For an example, A $360,000 loan moving from approximately 6% to 6.5% adds more than $100 per month in principal and interest. That can affect how much a buyer qualifies for and which neighborhood fits comfortably within their budget. This is also why closing cost assistance and interest rate buydowns are so valuable right now. A buyer may benefit more from receiving money towards a temporary or permanent rate buydown than from getting the same amount as a reduction in even sales price. New construction builders understand this. This is why they offer so many great financing incentives, closing cost assistance, and rate buydowns. Resale sellers may need to compete with those incentives, especially in areas with significant new construction. Where have buyers leveraged? Well, buyers generally have the most leverage in properties that have been on the market for an extended period of time, already experienced a few price reductions or any at all. The home needs cosmetic updating, or they have high HOA fees. Maybe insurance or assessments are a concern for the HOA, or are being sold by an owner with a firm moving deadline. Condos currently providing more negotiating opportunity than most single family homes because of the greater inventory. Buyers might be able to negotiate the sales price, closing costs, furnishings, inspection items, and an interest rate buydown. However, this does not mean that every seller will accept a low offer. A desirable home that is priced correctly can still receive multiple offers. I found this out today. Buyer leverage depends specifically on the property, not merely the overall market. What should sellers expect? Well, for sellers, the days of putting almost any price on a home and expecting buyers to compete are over. But that does not mean it's a bad time to sell. Single family inventory remains close to balance and buyer demand is still active. The homes that are selling successfully tend to have three things in common. They are priced according to current comparable sales, they present well in photos and in person, and they are marketed aggressively from the beginning. Sellers also need to understand that the first offer may be the best indication of the current market value. That does not mean you have to accept every offer, but dismissing a serious buyer because the market should eventually pay more can become an expensive mistake. Carrying costs, HOA fees, taxes, insurance, utilities, and additional price reductions can quickly erase the difference between an early offer and a later sale. For condo sellers especially, expectations must be more realistic. Buyers will examine HOA fees, insurance, rental restrictions, financial statements, and pending assessments, as well as the overall condition of the building. Having that information organized before listing can make a transaction much smoother. Now, you know, and we've talked about it before here on Coastal Living with Phil T, that Grand Strand is a collection of very different communities. Carolina Forest and Conway, they do continue to attract primary residence buyers because they offer newer construction, new neighborhood amenities, and more home for the money than other areas closer to the beach. Surfside Beach, Garden City, and Murrells Inlet continue to attract relocation buyers, retirees, second home purchasers, and investors, but prices vary greatly depending on whether the property is east or west of 17, or whether short-term rentals are allowed, and even how close it is to the ocean. Pawleys Island still tends to have higher average price point and lower volume transactions, so one or two luxury sales can significantly affect the monthly averages. North Myrtle Beach remains strong for second home and vacation rentals, but condo buyers are paying a close attention to the HOA expenses, as well as the rental performance and building conditions. Oceanfront condos can offer opportunities, but they must be evaluated building by building. There is no single number that accurately describes every property from North Myrtle Beach to Pawleys Island. So what do we expect for the rest of 2026? I expect the market to remain active, but very selective. I don't expect some huge dramatic crash across the Myrtle Beach area. We still have a continued population growth. Retirees still are relocating from other states. Folks still want second homes here on the Grand Strand, and investors and buyers still are attracted to the coastal lifestyle. However, affordability will continue to limit how quickly prices can rise. Single family prices will likely remain relatively stable overall, with the strongest properties and locations performing the best. Condos may continue, though, to experience greater price pressure because of the higher inventory, the HOA expenses, insurance costs, and building specific concerns. If mortgage rates move closer to 6%, we could see a noticeable increase again in buyer activity. But if rates remain in the mid to upper sixes, buyers will continue to be careful and payment focused. For buyers, that creates an opportunity. You have more time, more information, and more negotiating leverage than you did a few years ago. For sellers, this market can still produce a very successful sale, but pricing and preparation matter more than ever. So make sure you have an agent you trust. So is the housing market in Myrtle Beach crashing? No. Is every property appreciating rapidly? No. Market is more balanced and complicated than ever. And single family homes and condos are behaving very differently. Some neighborhoods remain very competitive while others provide buyers with substantial negotiating room. The most important thing to evaluate is the exact area, the property type, the building, and the price range you are actually considering. If you're thinking about moving to the Myrtle Beach area, buying a second home, or investing along the Grand Strand, or even selling a property you currently own, I would be happy to help you understand the numbers for your specific situation. You can give me a call or shoot me a text at 843-995-9950. Email me. And make sure you subscribe to Coastal Living with Phil T for more videos about living, buying, selling, and enjoying this Carolina coast. Thanks for watching, and as always, love where you live. Thanks for watching Coastal Living with Phil T.